Queen Cervantha of the Kithaeron Collective stood on the command deck of her flagship, watching Earth grow larger in the viewscreen, and reviewed her mission parameters one final time. She was here to deliver an ultimatum backed by military force. Humanity's rapid expansion into contested territories violated agreements made with the Galactic Council. Their aggressive resource extraction threatened ecosystems on worlds the Kithaerons considered sacred, and their consistent disregard for established protocols demonstrated dangerous arrogance that had to be addressed. The Kithaerons had tried diplomatic channels, formal complaints filed with the Council, direct communication with human authorities, clear warnings about the consequences of continued violations. Humanity had ignored them, continued expanding, treated Council warnings as suggestions rather than binding requirements. So Cervantha, serving as both queen and military commander of her people, had come personally to make Earth understand. Change your policies or face consequences. Her fleet was positioned just beyond weapon range, not an invasion force, but definitely a show of strength. A demonstration that the Kithaerons were serious. She expected resistance, human defiance, and defensive posturing. Possibly military escalation that would turn this confrontation into a conflict neither side actually wanted, but her people would pursue if necessary to protect their interests. What she didn't expect was Dr. Marcus Chen. The human diplomatic liaison assigned to meet her at the orbital platform looked at her with an expression she couldn't immediately interpret. Not fear, not hostility, but something else entirely. His eyes tracked the bioluminescent patterns shifting across her skin, studied the crystalline structures that crowned her head, examined her physiology with obvious fascination. Then, before any formal diplomatic protocols could begin, he spoke. "You're beautiful. I apologize, that's completely inappropriate for first diplomatic contact with a foreign head of state who's here to confront my species about serious policy violations. But your species' evolutionary adaptations are remarkable, and the way your bioluminescence patterns shift, I assume that indicates emotional state, is absolutely fascinating. I've read every published paper on Kithaeron biology, but actually seeing it in person is." He caught himself, clearly embarrassed by his own breach of protocol. "I'm supposed to be conducting formal diplomatic reception, and I'm completely geeking out over your physiology like an undergraduate seeing their first xenobiological specimen. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. Welcome to Earth orbit. Please don't judge humanity's overall diplomatic competence by my complete lack of appropriate decorum." Cervantha stood in complete silence for a moment, her bioluminescence patterns shifting through confusion, surprise, and something she couldn't quite identify. This was not how these encounters were supposed to begin. "You find Kithaeron physiology beautiful?" Cervantha finally asked, her bioluminescence patterns shifting in ways Marcus was learning probably indicated genuine surprise. "Yes, objectively, your species' evolutionary adaptations are extraordinarily elegant. The bioluminescence serving both communication and defensive camouflage functions. The crystalline structures that I'm guessing process electromagnetic signals, since the literature suggests Kithaera Prime has unusual magnetic field fluctuations. The way your musculature distributes, suggesting high-gravity adaptation, but with remarkable efficiency compared to other species from similar environments." Marcus realized he was doing it again, delivering impromptu lecture on xenobiology when he was supposed to be conducting formal diplomacy with a foreign leader who'd come to confront his species. "I'm a xenobiologist who got pulled into diplomatic service because apparently I'm the human most familiar with Kithaeron culture and biology. Which means I know a lot about your species' evolutionary history and absolutely nothing about proper diplomatic protocol." He took a breath. "You're here to deliver an ultimatum about humanity's expansion policies, territorial violations, and resource extraction concerns. I'm supposed to receive that ultimatum formally and convey it to my government. Should we do that part now, or should I embarrass myself further by asking whether the blue-green pattern your bioluminescence just displayed indicates annoyance?" "It indicates recalibration," Cervantha said slowly. "I came prepared for hostility or defensive posturing, not for genuine appreciation expressed with complete lack of political calculation." She studied Marcus with increased focus. You are familiar with Kithaeron concerns about human expansion. Yes. Your species has filed formal complaints about territorial violations in the Caliph sector, resource extraction damage to ecosystems on Velar 3 and Thurian 7, and humanity's general disregard for established Galactic Council protocols regarding expansion into contested space. And honestly, Your Majesty, the Kithaerons are completely right about all of it. Humanity's expansion policies have been aggressive and inconsiderate. Our resource extraction methodologies have damaged ecosystems we should have protected, and we've treated diplomatic warnings from established civilizations as suggestions because we're arrogant about our technological capabilities. Cervantha's bioluminescence patterns shifted dramatically, rapid cycling through what Marcus suspected were multiple emotional states happening simultaneously. You agree with our assessment. You acknowledge that your species' behavior has been problematic. Of course I agree. The evidence is overwhelming and the complaints are legitimate. Marcus gestured to the seating area of the reception chamber. The question isn't whether humanity has been wrong. We obviously have been. The question is what happens next. Whether this turns into conflict or whether we can actually address the grievances your people have raised through substantive policy changes. They sat. Cervantha found herself completely disoriented from her mission planning. She'd prepared for confrontation, for human defensiveness and aggressive counterarguments, for the difficult work of forcing a resistant species to acknowledge their violations, not for immediate agreement delivered with almost casual honesty. For what it's worth, Your Majesty, I've been arguing internally for exactly the policy changes you're here to demand. Stricter expansion protocols with mandatory council approval, comprehensive ecological impact assessments before any resource extraction, actually respecting established territorial designations instead of treating them as negotiable. Marcus's expression showed frustration. But I'm a xenobiologist who occasionally consults on policy, not someone with actual authority to implement systemic changes. You coming here personally, with a fleet backing your position, will probably accomplish what my reports and recommendations couldn't. He paused then. Can I ask you something completely off topic from the diplomatic crisis at hand? The way your bioluminescence patterns shift, you're communicating emotional states, aren't you? And I'm probably misreading most of them because I've only studied them theoretically. But there's a pattern that keeps recurring, a sort of amber to violet transition, that seems like. Curiosity mixed with recalibration, or am I completely wrong? You are not completely wrong, Cervantha said, her patterns shifting again in ways that confirmed his reading. That pattern does indicate what you might translate as curiosity combined with significant adjustment of expectations. I came here prepared for one type of encounter, and am receiving something entirely different. She leaned forward slightly. You are genuinely fascinated by Kithaeron biology. You genuinely agree that your species' policies have been problematic. You treat this as scientific and ethical discussion rather than political confrontation where you must defend your people regardless of evidence. Her bioluminescence displayed what Marcus was learning might be amusement mixed with warm regard. And yes, Dr. Chen, I am curious about you. You are not what I expected from humanity. You are not what any of our intelligence suggested I would encounter. I'm probably not representative, Marcus admitted. Most humans are more defensive about criticism of our expansion, more invested in justifying our behavior rather than acknowledging when we've been wrong. But some of us, xenobiologists especially, people who have studied other species and understand how ecosystems work, have been arguing that humanity needs to slow down, be more careful, actually respect the civilizations and environments we're affecting. He met her eyes directly. You came to force policy changes through threat of consequences. I want you to succeed. Not because I'm being strategic or trying to avoid conflict, but because the changes you're demanding are changes humanity needs to make regardless of whether anyone forces us. We should be doing this because it's right, not because we're threatened. But if threat is what it takes to make it happen, then I hope your threat succeeds. Over the following hours, what should have been tense diplomatic negotiation became something else entirely. Marcus connected Cervantha with Earth officials who actually had authority to implement policy changes. Representatives who'd been internally advocating for exactly the reforms the Kitharans were demanding, but who'd lacked political leverage to overcome expansionist factions. Cervantha's presence with fleet backing, her position provided that leverage. But she specifically requested Marcus remain as primary liaison, explaining to the Earth officials that his understanding of Kitharan concerns and his honest acknowledgement of human failures made him most effective for substantive dialogue. They discussed territorial boundaries, resource extraction reforms, ecological assessment protocols, all the substantive diplomatic issues. But they also discussed Kitharan evolutionary biology and human developmental psychology, why their species approached conflict so differently, whether humans' aggressive expansion came from evolutionary scarcity pressures or from cultural factors, how Kitharan bioluminescence created communication advantages but also made deception nearly impossible, the challenges of representing an entire species when you were also just a person trying to do what seemed right. Cervantha found herself studying Marcus as much as negotiating with Earth. The way he became animated discussing scientific topics, the genuine respect he showed for Kitharan concerns, the complete lack of political calculation in how he engaged with her, and the way he looked at her, with fascination and admiration that had nothing to do with diplomatic positioning and everything to do with genuine appreciation for who and what she was. By the time Cervantha prepared to return to her fleet to report on negotiation progress, everything had shifted from her initial expectations. "You came expecting conflict," Marcus observed as they stood together in the observation deck overlooking Earth. "And you're leaving with substantive policy reforms and negotiated agreements. That's a good diplomatic outcome." "I came expecting one type of species and encountered something more complex," Cervantha corrected. "I expected aggressive arrogance uniformly distributed across humanity. Instead, I found that some of you specifically, have been arguing internally for exactly the changes we demanded. That your species contains significant internal disagreement about expansion policies. That at least one human looks at Kitharan biology with genuine appreciation rather than seeing us as obstacles to overcome." Her bioluminescence patterns shifted to what Marcus had learned indicated affection or warm personal regard. "You fell for me, Dr. Chen. Not politically or strategically, but actually. You look at me and see someone remarkable rather than someone threatening. You study my bioluminescence patterns because you find them beautiful, not because you're calculating diplomatic advantage. You treat me as a person first and a queen second." Marcus didn't deny it. "Yes, I fell for you. You're brilliant, you advocate fiercely for your people's legitimate interests. You're honest in ways that make political conversations actually meaningful rather than just strategic positioning. And yes, you're beautiful in ways that have nothing to do with politics and everything to do with who you are as a person and what your species represents in evolutionary terms." He smiled slightly. "I know that's completely inappropriate given that you came here to confront my species, and I'm supposed to be diplomatic liaison maintaining professional boundaries. But I'm apparently constitutionally incapable of proper protocol where you're concerned. I look at you and I see someone extraordinary, and I can't pretend that's just scientific or diplomatic interest." Cervantha was quiet for a long moment, her bioluminescence cycling through complex patterns Marcus couldn't fully interpret, but that seemed to indicate deep emotion. "I came to fight humanity, to deliver ultimatum backed by threat of force. To make your species understand that continued aggression would have serious consequences." Her voice was soft. "What I found instead was one human who made me reconsider whether your species is inherently problematic or whether you're going through a difficult developmental phase that some of your people recognize and genuinely want to address." She reached out, touched Marcus's face. Brief contact that made her bioluminescence flare in patterns he recognized as intense positive emotion. "I cannot pursue a relationship with a human while serving as queen and military commander who just confronted your species about serious violations. The political complications would be immense on both sides. But I want you to know, I fell for you too, for your genuine fascination with my people, for your intellectual honesty about your own species' failures, for the way you treat me as a person rather than just a political obstacle to navigate around." She withdrew her hand. I must return to my fleet and report on negotiations. Earth has agreed to policy reforms. The immediate crisis is resolved. But you have changed something fundamental about how I perceive humanity, Dr. Chen, and I suspect we will see each other again. Months later, with policy reforms implemented and Kither and human relations significantly improved, Cervantha formally requested Marcus as permanent liaison between their species. Officially, because his understanding of Kitharan culture and his effectiveness at bridging differences made him ideal for the position. Unofficially, because she couldn't stop thinking about the human who'd looked at her with wonder instead of fear, who'd fallen for her despite, or perhaps because of, the fact that she came to confront his species. Their relationship developed slowly, carefully, navigating the immense complexity of Queen and Liaison, former potential adversaries becoming something more. Public announcement came only after 2 years of private relationship building, and even then created political complications they managed together. Years later, when asked about how she'd prevented Kitharan-human conflict from escalating into war, Cervantha told a story that became famous across multiple species. I came to fight, to deliver ultimatum with fleet backing my position, to force humanity to address their aggressive expansion through threat of consequences they couldn't ignore. What changed everything was one human who looked at me and saw someone remarkable rather than threatening, who agreed immediately that his species had been wrong, who fell for me despite the fact that I represented confrontation with his people. Her bioluminescence patterns displayed warm affection. He transformed confrontation into genuine dialogue by treating me as person first and political obstacle second, by being intellectually honest about his species' failures rather than defensive, by showing me that humanity contained people capable of recognizing problematic behavior and genuinely wanting to change it. The policy reforms happened because Earth officials wanted to make those changes, and my